Hi everybody, Nick McDonald here, coming to you this time from Sydney, Australia. We've just done a course live in Sydney and been teaching the Aussies all about the Russell 2000. So not too many of them knew about the Russell, they all know about the Dow. And I've been teaching them to trade the Russell, and they're all very excited and all going to be listening to ICE commentary tomorrow. So hopefully you're all listening to this one. But looking here at the Russell, and let's start with the monthly chart. Nothing's much changed here on the monthly chart from last week. It takes a bit longer than that, but the monthly chart remains bullish. In fact, we've moved up a bit from last week. Now we've got an even more bullish monthly candle. This is starting to look pretty good. The uptrend is still intact. All in all, the Russell is still looking stronger here to the upside. Weekly chart, we've drawn in our levels here. We've got support down at 600. We've got some resistance in here. Now support, previous resistance, now becoming support at 700. So now that we're above that, and as long as we're above that, expect price to act as support at 700 and look for trading opportunities there. The big thing now is looking up at where do we need to get to before we run into the next level of resistance. And we've got a pretty good run. It's up around 765 on the Russell. We could even probably move this line down a bit. So it's around 750 to 760. We don't have to be so precise. The levels are often precise, especially if they fall at a big number, like for example 700 makes it a very precise level. Otherwise we're just looking at where is the the most defined support and resistance level. It's around 765, but a little bit before we're going to start hitting some resistance. As it comes up to these lows, it's in that right zone. So the thing is, we've got a pretty clear run to there, and we've still got this risk of a default of Greek debt and things like that. So we've got risk of a knock-on effect from a Greece default, hurting French banks, hurting German banks, and having a knock-on effect to hurting British banks and hurting American banks, and starting to hurt American stocks and therefore hurting the Russell 2000. So we've got that risk, but we got some good news out at the end of last week and resulted in a very positive week. So we need to keep an eye on news as well. I don't trade the news myself, I trade the technicals, but we don't know what news will come, and we can't predict this week whether we'll have good news or bad news. What we can predict though is to say, look, with the exception of some major piece of bad news, this is looking somewhat bullish, like it should be able to get up and test this upper region around 765. That's the next place it comes into. Runs into resistance, but we just need to be aware of the risk when there's such a big threat hanging over us of something like that Greek default, and seeing what kind of effect that could have on the markets. So being very aware of risk right now because of that news. But coming and looking at this on the daily chart, we've had some great opportunities around 700. You can even see some really precise touches there on the daily chart, but drill down to a lower time frame, you'll see some great trades around 700. This week I'll certainly be looking for any pullbacks into 7 and looking for long trades off that level. I think the Russell's looking pretty bullish here. There's not much stopping it going higher. We've started to put in higher lows in the daily chart. We've even put in higher lows on this high here. This is just one touch on this high, so we don't consider it resistance. The price has only tested it once, so we should at the very least get up and be testing that level. We should break that level. We should be moving up more towards 765. So that's where the probabilities lie. And just to recap, just being very, very aware of the risk. Now have a look at the Russell here and look, okay, we've got some decent room to move from around 715 where we closed last week up towards around the 765 level. Let's just come and have a look at a few other markets. So let's look at the Dow and look at the key level on the Dow and how far the Dow's got to move. So the Dow's much closer. It's okay, not in terms of points or ticks, but certainly we're closer, and we haven't got as far to move on the Dow. So the Dow, the key level is 12,000 here. It's also a big number, and we're going to run into some resistance maybe a little bit sooner as well. So around about 11,850 up to 12,000. So we want to watch the Dow and see if that gets there first. How does the Dow react at that level? And it will give us a bit of a heads up as to how the Russell might react. We've also got the S&P. And the key level in the S&P is also a big number. It's, in fact, I've got it marked on the weekly chart here. On the weekly chart, it's around about 1250, maybe a little bit higher, so about 1265. But that's where we're running back into these old lows, old resistance, becoming support. We want to watch and see what happens as and when price gets there. The one thing that's promising here, or that's bullish for stocks, is that the Nasdaq is very much already broken up through these old lows. So the first one to get up there and test has been the Nasdaq, and it's broken through. At first, see here in the last two weekly candles, started to reject those previous lows. We had support through here. Let's draw a line in. We had support right through that level where we touched back here, touched again here, touched again here. We touched here, found resistance, fell off. Twice we broke above and rejected. It was looking bearish at that point, but now we're completely broken up and broken convincingly through those levels. So the Nasdaq is looking bullish, and the Nasdaq is very much leading the stock market. So what does this mean for us, and what does it mean when we come back here to the Russell? The Russell is probably in, It's in a similar position to the Dow and the S&P, but it's also slightly lagging them, and it's probably got a bit more room to move. And that's actually a really positive thing for us, because we can watch the other markets as leading indicators here. We can watch and see what do they do. What do the Dow and the S&P do? Do they get up to those previous levels here? You know, like we've got marked on the Russell. Do they get up there first? Do they test them? Do they break through them? Like we're looking at the Russell, at the Nasdaq now, and seeing that the Nasdaq has broken through. That's a good leading indication of what the Russell might do. Certainly, the fact that markets are heading that direction, uptrending on daily charts now and on monthly charts, and no resistance in the way until we get up to those levels, it's looking pretty promising, pending any major news announcements that might make move markets in the opposite direction. It's looking pretty positive to the upside. So all in all, markets are looking bullish, but we've got to have a real focus on risk right now until we get past this potential Greek default and European banking potential crisis. I won't use the word crisis now, but I'd say it's a potential crisis if things get worse. Right now, I think the word crisis is overused. We need to wait and see just how bad it gets, if it gets bad at all. Don't like to scaremonger, just like to be aware of the potential for that news and just be conscious of it and limit our trading decisions and with that in mind. Happy trading all, have a wonderful week. Speak to you next time.